Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Niccolò Figatramanca. I'm the Secretary General of No Peace Without Justice. It's my great pleasure to thank the co-sponsors for hosting this event, Defending the Defenders, Countering Sanctions and Coercive Measures against the International Criminal Court, and those supporting its mandate. We have a remarkable list of speakers, and we only have an hour. So I will ask speakers to be brief. I know they have, and we would like to hear a lot more from them. But I will start by giving the floor to our host, Ambassador Galón, permanent representative of Colombia, for a word of welcome. Ambassador, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Niccolò, dear Ambassador Craici, Special Rapporteur Francesca Albanese, distinguished panelists and representatives from the permanent missions of South Africa and Spain, distinguished colleagues. Last year, in a side event focused on judicial independence, I had the opportunity to refer to the case of Guatemala's public prosecutor, who announced arrest warrants for both Colombia's Attorney General, Mrs. Camargo, and for Mr. Ivan Velázquez, former members of the International Commission Against Impunity in Guatemala, in a politically motivated action that was rejected by the governments of the two countries. I observed the same kind of behavior in the case of the sanctions imposed on the International Criminal Court and other international courts that are regrettable and deeply affect accountability and the fight against impunity for crimes under international law and the most serious human rights violations and abuses. In this regard, I would like to recall that Judge Tomoko Akane, President of the Court, has publicly warned, I quote, "The judges of the International Criminal Court act without fear or favor, lending legitimacy to the entire multilateral system and to the states parties to the Rome Statute who elected them. Their judgments remind the international community that justice has a neutral voice that transcends borders and interests. But when these judges are pressured, threatened, or undermined, the credibility of international law itself is weakened." End of quotation. Also, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights has issued press statements emphasizing that sanctions against judges of the International Criminal Court undermine the court's independence and the access to justice for victims, in line with statements from several United Nations experts and mandate holders to respect the court's independence as a judicial institution and protecting the independence and impartiality of those who work there. In this regard, Colombia has condemned in different fora the imposition of sanctions that undermine the work of the International Criminal Court and the pursuit of international criminal justice. Colombia unconditionally supports the work of the International Criminal Court in context of political vulnerability, categorically rejects any interference that hinders investigations, and is prepared to coordinate with other states parties on concrete actions to defend the institution, such as highlighting external pressures and their impact on victims. Colombia also rejects the imposition of coercive measures that undermine the court's mandate and activities, which amounts to an attack on international justice. We demand the respect for international law and the rules-based order. Furthermore, we reaffirm our commitment to the rule of law and the values enshrined in the Rome Statute and call for respect for judicial independence and international criminal justice. We consider that the imposition of sanctions not only has an operational dimension, but also raises implications for the international legal order and for multilateralism as a legitimate means of addressing the most serious crimes. Sanctions and coercive measures against international criminal justice do not end at the political level, but directly affect essential principles, such as judicial independence and non-interference in the administration of justice. This situation also applies to the work that has been done by the Special Rapporteur, Francesca Albanese, here with us today, who has been the target of attacks that cannot be tolerated, given her status as a mandate holder of the special procedures of the Human Rights Council. I would like to take this opportunity to express the Colombian government's strong support and solidarity with her mandate, and to recognize her work in defense of the human rights of the Palestinian people, carried out with unwavering determination and a high sense of ethics and morality. Allow me to conclude by reaffirming that the ongoing genocide in Gaza demands not only our concern, but the urgent enforcement of international law, the unwavering commitment to international humanitarian law and international human rights law, even under extreme conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I'm very pleased that the Special Rapporteur you mentioned, Francesca Albanese, has taken the time to join us to talk about what it means to be under sanction, under coercive measure for the exercise of her United Nations Human Rights Council mandate in violation of UN treaty obligations. We will hear again from her on the substance of her work this afternoon in the Council chamber, but I'm very, very happy to give her the floor here now.
Good morning, Excellencies, colleagues, and friends. I would like to thank particularly the ambassadors of the State of Palestine and the ambassador of Colombia. Muchas gracias por sus palabras y su soporto. And I want to also thank No Peace Without Justice for convening all of us. I would have expected this gathering to happen before, hopefully at the initiative of the United Nations as an organization, given particularly my status of UN expert on mission protected under the UN Convention on Privileges and Immunities. And I also want to acknowledge and thank the Coalition for the ICC, who will speak later, and last but not least, the representatives of the Palestinian human rights organizations who are here. I say last but not least because they are the first who have been carrying the brunt and paying the brunt of what me and the judges and prosecutors of the ICC are facing. And let me start with this as I move to the substance of my remarks. What do Palestinian human rights organizations, ICC judges and prosecutors, and the UN Special Rapporteur have in common? The fact that they were pursuing accountability. Nothing more, nothing less. So you have the organization that has costed the efforts of dozens of countries to advance justice for the victims and survivors of the most heinous crimes, which is the ICC. You have organizations who work to collect information about international law violations, and not just committed by Israel as the occupying power, because these organizations have also, if we know also about the violations that have been committed by the Palestinian Authority and by the de facto authority Hamas in pre-genocide Gaza, it's thanks to them. And they should have been supported more, because what they have endured comes from afar, from the designation of them as terrorist organizations years ago. I will return to this later. But again, We are just pursuing accountability, documenting and monitoring human rights violations, violations of international humanitarian law and other instruments of the United Nations. And we are punished for that. I can't remember, really, I've lost count of the insults, of the threats, of the reprisals I've received in the last 6 months alone by so many of you, your governments, your ministers, the organizations that you allow, pro-apartheid organizations in most European countries, you allow to smear, to spread misinformation, while real crimes continue to be committed and the perpetrators go unpunished. And this is the paradox that we are facing today. This is the paradox. We are assisting, we are just spectators. This is why I think the title of this event is so appropriate. We are spectators to the dismantling of accountability from the ground up. And if you think that it will stay in Palestine, it will only concern Palestine, you're wrong. And the human rights community, from Palestinian human rights organizations, even Israeli human rights organizations, and UN independent experts, not just my mandate, have been saying that for decades, Israel must be held accountable. And the elephant in the room, the US as well. They behave above the law because this is the system. Eventually, this is the World War II, post-World War II system that we have built together. And probably we have reached a point that if it's not of profound transformation, it will be of collapse. The system is already collapsing on our head. The second point I wanted to raise before concluding is what it means to be sanctioned. I cannot speak for the Palestinian lawyers who sit on the panel with me, but they will surely give us a sense of what they have endured, not just after the sanctions, but for years. But I can tell you, it's impairing. You cannot function as an individual anymore. You are dependent. I have less autonomy than my 13-year-old child. Can you believe, just for writing reports to the United Nations, let alone the bank account? I'm checked everywhere I go because the OFAC sanctions create a sense of culpability around us, that the system, especially in Western countries, is alerted. You see us, you see human rights experts, you see a UN independent expert, but in fact, for the system that collects our data, I'm no more, no less than a narco trafficant, a drug dealer, or a terrorist that has been designated by the United States. And anyone who doesn't react to this firmly, robustly, is to an extent complicit. Frankly, I'm very disappointed, and I will have the chance to elaborate upon this without taking too much time from the report I have to deliver today, which is extremely painful, which is about torture. But I have to say I am very disappointed by the fact that no member state has taken the US to the International Court of Justice for a violation of the UN Convention on Privileges and Immunities, because this is what the US deserves, to appear before the International Court of Justice for violation of that convention. Because member states didn't do that, and by the way, I thank all the member states who expressed solidarity toward me in the Human Rights Council and the General Assembly, and so my fellow special rapporteurs. But someone had to make sure that the sanctions are removed. And for that, and with this I conclude, for that, my 13-year-old daughter is now suing the US administration. This is what I had to force my family to endure because of the sanctions and the impairing effect they have on my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Francesca. Thank you, Special Rapporteur. When we speak for the victims, we take away their voice. And that's why we're very happy not to be speaking for you and not to be speaking for the Palestinian human rights organizations that were also designated expressly for their cooperation with the International Criminal Court, and very happy to not to speak for them, but to give them the floor. Shawan Jabarin from Al-Haq was unable to leave Ramallah, and therefore instead, in his stead, I'm very pleased to give the floor to Al-Haq's representative, Susan Power. Susan, we share a slot, a little compressed with the other two, so I would ask you to be as incisive as always you are, but also fairly quick. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the ambassadors of Colombia and Palestine as well for hosting the event. And today I will show how the sanctions against our organizations are the latest tool in what we call a joint criminal enterprise between Israel and the United States to destroy the International Criminal Court to ensure Israeli impunity for international crimes. But first, we must understand the reality on the ground in Palestine. Israel controls every access point into Palestine under its discriminatory settler colonial apartheid regime and unlawful occupation. And at the same time, Israel systematically denies access to UN special rapporteurs, commissions of inquiry, fact-finding missions, and the investigative team of the International Criminal Court, who are all denied access into Palestine. So that means that human rights organizations like Al-Haq, like Al-Mizan, PCHR, play a central role in coordinating with investigative mechanisms. We monitor and document human rights violations on the ground. We submit evidence to the mechanisms, and for that, we ourselves have become a target. The sanctions did not happen in a vacuum. They are the latest chapter in a decades-long campaign to silence accountability on Palestine. In 2015, when the state of Palestine acceded to the Rome Statute, Al-Haq began preparing files of evidence for the preliminary examination. By 2016, our General Director, Shawan Jabarin, and Nadika Swanson, our legal expert on the International Criminal Court, received death threats of such a gravity that the then prosecutor noted in her annual report that the Dutch authorities, as the host state to the court, were treating the matter with the utmost seriousness. Since then, Israel has tried to cut our funding. It's made a series of interventions to third states and donors. In 2018, Israel's Ministry of Strategic Affairs was established and produced a number of reports to smear Al-Haq and other human rights organizations. It said that we were carrying out terrorist tactics, and it specifically cited our work at the International Criminal Court and our work on the UN Human Rights Council as part of those tactics. In October 2021, Israel designated Al-Haq and 5 other Palestinian human rights organizations as terrorist organizations. And again, this was for our legitimate human rights work. And Israel itself said in the designation orders that it was for the promotion of steps against Israel in the international arena. UN experts at the time condemned the misuse of counterterrorism measures as a frontal attack on human rights everywhere. We had 9 foreign ministers issuing a joint statement saying that there was no evidence for the designations and that they would continue to support our organizations. So when the United States added Al-Haq to the sanctions list, along with our partners, PCHR and Al-Mizan, we weren't surprised. But what surprised us was the international community's complete failure to act. Within days, we were suffering the consequences. Banks cut off access to our bank accounts. US funders stopped funding us. Non-US funders did risk assessments and also stopped funding us. Our staff couldn't be paid. Our advocacy was affected, our litigation efforts were affected, and many of our work streams in the organisation were completely ground to a halt. Our colleagues with US citizenship, including senior staff members who worked with Al-Haq for decades, had to resign with immediate effect. US companies such as YouTube, Meta, MailChimp, and Gmail either restricted access to us or deplatformed our work. We had hundreds of videos that were on YouTube that overnight vanished, and we had cited these YouTube materials of Al-Haq in various litigation efforts that were ongoing. And right now, we are working on the worst atrocities against the Palestinian people, an ongoing genocide, the worst devastation witnessed anywhere since World War II. And we're working with a decimated staff with no money coming into our organisation. But there's something more damaging again, and that's the over-compliance that we see within the human rights movement. The organisations, the coalitions that we've worked with for decades, they've made decisions to discontinue working with us or to distance themselves from working with us. And our organisations, who are the victims of a genocidal apartheid regime, we are now being treated like the outcasts. We're being treated like criminals by our own human rights colleagues. And worst of all, we have been completely abandoned by states. We note that unlike the massive swell of support that we had from states after the designations in 2021, this time there's been no rush to issue joint statements, no rush to issue the condemnations or to take any protective action. And the question now is, do states still believe in an international criminal court? And if they do they believe enough to protect it? Because the institutions that we fail to protect will be destroyed. They'll be destroyed by the United States and Israel in a joint criminal enterprise to prevent Israeli accountability. We therefore call on states to immediately implement the EU blocking statute, and we expect the Netherlands to take the lead on this as the host state to the International Criminal Court. We urge states to engage with banks, financial institutions and tech companies, and to prevent this over-compliance with the sanctions. At a UN General Assembly level, we need to adopt a resolution to protect the International Criminal Court, condemning and demanding the revocation of the sanctions. And for NGOs, coalitions, our donors, our partners, we need to continue our projects. We need to continue to work together. And we must remember our core values, demand full criminal accountability for Israel's genocide of the Palestinian people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Susan. It's my pleasure to give the floor to Issam Younis, the Director General of Al Mazan Center for Human Rights.
Thank you, Nico.
You have the floor.
Thank you. Well, thank you, the ambassadors of Palestine and Colombia, and it's a great honor to be here. And thank you for your time being with us, your excellencies, friends, colleagues. Where I think it's important to put the sanctions against all of us in the context of the fact that governments are not anymore denying the perpetuation of crimes. In the past, they used to deny, fabricate facts, but now they are proud of committing war crimes and proud of committing genocide. The chronic problem in that part of the world in Palestine is the fact that impunity is the issue, and accountability has never been dealt with seriously. And victims continue to pay a very high price out of this very utilitarian way of dealing with the issues of justice, accountability, and the human rights. Gaza has been the scene of many offenses, many wars. 2008, 2012, 2020, 2021, 2023, 2020, and story did not end. And Palestinians in Gaza as well as in the West Bank are further than any time to achieve the minimum requirements for justice. Can a society live with that? It's mission impossible. And that's why we, as a human rights organizations, from day one, asked for accountability. Accountability for all, those who violated the principles of Rome, regardless of their religion, sex, nationality. The minute we decided and went public and advocating accountability, we've been subjected to unprecedented smear campaigns against our organizations. And as Susan just mentioned, that many of our colleagues have received threats of killings. The whole rationale was to delegitimize our work and to defund our organizations, intimidating donors, governments, and it has been finally culminated with the US administration sanctions of the three organizations. The sanctions are part of a broader campaign against the ICC. And the ICC is, as you know, is mandated to advance and advocate the international justice. So the sanction was part of this very broad campaign against the ICC, which, as you know, has previously included just judges, prosecutors, other ICC officials, civil society organizations, and UN Special Rapporteur Francesca Albanese. So it's process to undermine the accountability process, international pursuit for international justice, as well as the International Criminal Court. The organizations have been sanctioned solely because of their engagement with the court. You know, sanctioning the organizations because of that matter, supporting accountability, finally strikes the very foundation of the rule of law. And that was the whole rationale, and intended to intimidate those defending victims' rights as well as victims themselves. Such measures constitute direct assault on the court's independence and ultimately imperil victims' access to justice. The US attempts finally try to isolate the court and unjustifiably punish those in support of it sets a dangerous precedent that chills civic engagement and threatens the integrity of the court itself and the whole international justice system. These punitive measures serve to reinforce Israel's illegal and ongoing campaign documented by leading human rights organizations to stifle Palestinian civil society organizations operating in the unlawfully occupied Palestinian territories. The sanctions that were posed and taken against the Palestinian organizations have very serious dynamics and impacts on the different levels. I just mentioned part of it because we are part of the ICC process, and I think here one should raise the point that any backing, any measures to back and advocate the court should include the civil society organizations in any measures to have been taken or to be taken. As I said, the sanctions have very multiple determinant effects on our work and operations. As Susan just mentioned, the three organizations, the bank accounts have been frozen. We cannot anymore receive any funds. We became like outcasts. Many would be away from engaging with here legally speaking with the organizations. We cannot pay the salaries of our staff. It has very serious impact on our operations, talking about documentation, monitoring, documentation of daily war crimes and crimes against me in the Gaza Strip, because most of our staff, the bulk of our staff are still in Gaza, live there. So they are mandated and doing their best to document those violations. At the moment, we are faced with a very serious challenge in the legal aid as well as in documentation of war crimes, and definitely on our operations and work on accountability. So it's time to reconsider this seriously, and I think we should stop playing this game of, on the one hand, show solidarity, on the other hand, no actions to be taken. I think time is being this time counted differently, and it's time for actions. I mean, the blocking statute is one of the issues that are available in the hands of European governments. And again, we as civil society organizations, I mean, the sanctioning of the three organizations is just a starting point that will include others, definitely, as long as they advocate accountability in Palestine and Afghanistan and other areas. And we think the governments now should take immediately those actions for the sake of accountability and promoting the rule of law and what's left of international law. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. It's my pleasure now to give the floor to Raji Surani, the founder and director of the Palestinian Center for Human Rights. Raji, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you so much. As a lawyer who doing this work for the last 4 to 5 years, I never ever thought in my life once I'll be defending the work that we are doing. Our mission to defend victims of torture, victims of genocide, victims of ethnic cleansing, but never ever we thought we come to this. It's in a way Kafka when human rights defenders, defend or try to defend the work they are doing. While we are talking right now, ethnic cleansing, genocide, going on in Gaza, business as usual. And this is going on for the last 2.5 years, 30 months. The Convention of Prevention and Punishment of Genocide, that's the title of the Convention of Genocide. But this is still going on. All the conditions we have for these crimes is still going on, and much more. It expanded from Gaza to West Bank and Jerusalem, where the process taking place as well there. Now, instead of talking about this real issue, the genocide, the ethnic cleansing, we are defending ourselves. We are obsessed with our own stupid little things. How our organizations can survive and continue the mission of defense of human rights, of the real victims, the people of Palestine. Lawyers and the human rights organizations, those who are on the ground collecting data, building evidence, legal files to provide to the ICC, to the prosecution office, to the investigative bodies. Now, with the sanctions, they intend to paralyze us and to stop this, the fact that the prosecutor office cannot visit the occupied territories and the judges cannot be at the theater of the crime in the occupied territories. So it's obvious and rightly when they target Palestinian human rights organizations, when they target the prosecutor office by sanctions, when they target the judges and the special rapporteur, the circle is closed. It's total paralysis of one of the most important legal system on earth, the ICC. We didn't invent that, but the intention, very obvious. In the 80th anniversary of Nuremberg trials, no more accountability. That's the message. Especially, they were simple and clear and direct. Why we are sanctioned? Because of the work, the legal work we are doing at the ICC. In this world, you have to choose either or. Rule of law or rule of jungle. What's going on? Simple, clear, direct. It's enhancing and building effectively the rule of jungle and destroying the entire legal system through these sanctions. We will be very short-sighted if we think this is related to Palestine. This is related to Gaza. This is not. This is the new world order. And that's why the states who still believe in rule of law and accountability of the shared human values of the ICC, of the ICJ, to stand and defend all these principles. Selectivity, politicization of international law, it's evil. Now we moved due to the conspiracy of silence to New Horizon, Iran wall. That means the entire region. I don't know how much the respected states, the world community, will be tolerant to see this rule of jungle going on and on and on. We will not give up. And we have no right to be good victims for criminals, for those who are proud of doing genocide and ethnic cleansing on the daylight. We will stand for the principles. We will be in the forefront. That's our humanity, that's our mission and omission. But we are calling upon human community before it's too late to stand for rule of law and the dignity of man before it's too late. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Raji. I think we've heard from 4 of the sanctioned individuals. Many more. There's many more. The judges at the ICC, the prosecutor and deputy prosecutors of the ICC. I'm very pleased that our next speaker is somebody who's spoken to all of them. Zoe Paris, the advocacy coordinator of the NGO Coalition for the International Criminal Law, has been conducting systematic interviews with each of the designated individuals. I think she's got 1 left or 2. And she will have spoken to every single one of them to write a report on the impact of sanctions. Before I give her the floor, I note from the previous speakers only two things of the many that they mentioned and that are essential. One is strikes home particularly. I've been doing this job for a long time, and including in the field on war crimes and crimes against humanity. And the one difference that I see evident is that in the 90s, we used to have the problem that perpetrators used to hide their crimes. And you had to go and find out what happened. Now perpetrators ostentatiously present their crimes to the world as evidence of their impunity. And that is a qualitative difference of crimes were committed before in many places in the world, but now they're displayed to the world because power is expressed through impunity. So impunity is not a result of our incapacity, but a result of their display. And this is very troubling in that it challenges not only the right of people to exist, not only the individual victims' liberties, but it challenges the system itself. And I'm sorry to be editorializing, and especially sorry to be delaying Zoe's presentation. Zoe, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, and in particular, thank you to the Palestinian organizations and Francesca Albanese for being here today and sharing with everyone what the sanctions mean. I'm going to present the main findings of the report, and I won't go into details where colleagues have already covered, but it's not the first time that the US is targeting the ICC. In particular in 2020, when then prosecutor Bensouda was sanctioned. But today's sanctions really created a shift, and this was shared by every person that was interviewed for the purpose of the report, is that here the goal is really to destroy the international justice system as it stands today and target it at its roots by attacking the Palestinian organizations that are documenting the facts on the ground. Our second finding is in relation to the impact. The main question that these sanctions have posed is how does a US domestic legal instrument can have such severe, wide-reach impact even outside of its jurisdiction? How can US sanctions lead to an Italian bank based in Italy refusing to open a bank account in euro to an Italian national? How can US sanctions, which do not prohibit the import and export of information materials, lead to a Palestinian organization at Damir having their website and social media taken down? And this is because of the very broad prohibition of material support or services to designated individuals, but most importantly, because of the world's structural dependency on US banking, US financial system, US IT, and US service sector. And in practice, the sanctions have had extreme extraterritorial reach all around the world, way beyond the US. And so US individuals and companies fear heavy fines. We're talking about $1 million fines and 20 years in prison. And non-US fear sanctions or criminal and civil penalties. So this has led, as it was underlined by Francesca Albanese, and also from my colleagues, to companies, individuals, and even NGOs de-risking or over-complying and cutting off their services or relations to designated individuals. In practice, what does it mean? It means that every single person that is designated lose access to their credit card because it depends on US company like Visa, MasterCard, American Express. Some lose their payment methods, including their debit cards, and some also lost just access to their bank accounts completely. It means that people are unable to do transfer, international transfer, and this has a particular impact for ICC judges who are based in the Netherlands but have families and their lives in other countries. It also means losing access to US companies like Google, iCloud, Uber that people use in their daily basis, and difficulties traveling, booking plane tickets and hotels. It even reached a point where certain family members of the designated individual lost access to their accounts. For Palestinian NGOs, it was brilliantly covered by my colleague, but it really aims to isolate them, to silence them, and to make them unable to operate. Overall, what it means for every person and every structure, it means time and resources put into the question of sanctions, and it means diversion of mission. And today is a great example of this. We have at the table some of the most brilliant experts on international law and Palestine, and we're discussing US sanctions. So the US has really weaponized its US dollars and its financial system to cripple accountability for the crimes committed by the US and its allies. The third finding of the report is how the US has criminalized any accountability work and has created an overall environment of fear. For US individuals and NGOs, any work in relation to Palestine and Afghanistan investigations is criminalized with up to 20 years in prison. They had to stop all their work with those designated, including essential advocacy and strategic litigation work. And this greatly impacts any coordination efforts and the ability for civil society organizations to work together. But it also leads to a chilling effect across the entire sector. And there is something that we wonder, and that is really difficult, if not impossible, to assess, is what is the impact of the chilling effect. People who would decide not to engage, journalists, activists who will focus on something else, people who will decide not to be vocal about Palestine and Afghanistan, or who would decide not to cooperate with the court. This chilling effect that we cannot measure has been felt by everyone that was interviewed. But overall, from individuals and organizations that we've interviewed, what we saw is resilience from all actors. The message was very clear. ICC judges, deputy prosecutors, civil society organization will continue their work undeterred. But in order to continue their work, they need actions from states. They need and states to protect them from the extraterritorial impact of these sanctions and to allow them to continue to operate. And what we've seen, and this is the last finding, is the lack of structural and coordinated response to these sanctions from states, but also from institutions like the United Nations. One of the very clear examples that was raised by my colleague is the refusal of the European Union Commission to activate the EU blocking statute that would mitigate the extraterritorial application of sanctions into EU territory where the court is based. But I want to talk a bit more about the UN because we're in Geneva today. And the UN is interesting because we can compare. It is not the first time that the UN independent expert was attacked for doing its mandate. And in the 90s, when a UN mandate holder was prosecuted for a speech that he said in his role as a special rapporteur, the UN took action up to requesting an advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice and was very publicly vocal about the issue. Now, in Francesca Albanese's case, the UN Secretary General has, to our knowledge, not himself spoken about the matter up until today. The UN General Assembly has not passed any resolution and did not request an advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice, and the sanctions were not challenged under US law by the UN. So these failures are a very clear signal to UN experts that they will not be protected and that powerful states can do as they please without consequences. It sets a very worrying tone for UN independent experts. And it also means, and this is something that has been very clear from the interview, that because there is no structural answer and response from states, there has been different impact on individuals and organizations targeted based on the response and the level of support that they've received from states and institutions. Which means that if you are designated, you are at the mercy of your government, whether they are willing or not to engage on the question of sanctions. States have set up the system. They've elected the individuals to perform the duties for which they are now paying the price for, and it is a responsibility from state to step up. It is an attack against the international justice system, but we want to make it very clear that as civil society organization, we will continue our work, we will remain steady and undeterred, and more importantly, united. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zoe, for that. I'm conscious of the fact that there is another very interesting side event in this room at at 1 o'clock, and I would encourage all delegations to stay for that. It's also on international criminal matters, and so with that plug-in for them, I hope they will be more generous with us. It's sponsored by Belgium and the IBA, but we're not done yet. We have the pleasure of having the permanent representative of Palestine offer some words of conclusion. I should mention at this point that the other co-sponsors that we're very honored that chose to join us in this, including the permanent mission of Slovenia, the permanent mission of Spain, that have decided to be part of this side event, and with that, I'll give the floor to the Ambassador of Palestine. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I would like at the beginning to thank Ambassador Gustavo and the mission of Colombia, Ambassador Anita of Slovenia, the mission of Spain and South Africa, and all co-sponsors of this event focused on defending the defenders and countering sanctions and coercive measures against civil society, Special Rapporteur, the first UN representative to be sanctioned, and the ICC and those supporting its mandate. Thanks are due to the organizers, and we appreciate the contribution we heard from the speakers, mainly are the sanctions, and the recommendations that we mentioned. Excellencies and colleagues, thank you for your participation. We meet at a time when prosecutors, judges, special rapporteurs, and NGOs are sanctioned, and war criminals are shielded. The work to protect the ICC must begin by states parties. They need to set up their political support to empower and strengthen the court's organs to be able to fulfill its mandate in line with the Rome Statute. Civil society organizations, human rights defenders, and the special rapporteur should be protected from retaliation. Therefore, it's essential for states, parties, and other stakeholders to engage with banks and private entities in their respective jurisdiction and subject to their domestic law to ensure that those entities do not over-comply with the sanctions designations made by non-state party. I will participate as a parliamentarian in the coming General Assembly of the IPU, International Parliamentarian Union, next month in Istanbul. And I am planning to have a discussion with the Secretariat and the parliamentarians worldwide to encourage them to adopt resolutions and legislation to protect workers in this field from unjust sanctions in accordance with the international law. We can also urge executive authorities to monitor banks and other institutions' compliance with the providing services to them. At the Human Rights Council, there are several ideas that can be discussed, such as holding intersessional meeting or organizing a panel discussion and attempting to include preventive measures in some relevant resolutions. And we can develop many ideas later to find a way how we can protect those who are sanctions. Now we have 3 of them here from Palestine and the special rapporteur, and there is many who are not with us. Once again, thank you, organizers and the coalition.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid we've run out of time. If there's any brief comments from the floor, we have about a minute. Then what is left for me is to say thank you to the permanent mission of Colombia, Palestine, South Africa, Slovenia, and Spain for convening this meeting. Thank you very much to our panelists. And we have work to do. We have work to do, which is to do with protecting the system. The system is not dead, and I don't think this will kill it. But it is our responsibility, I think, to stand up to illegal, particularly extraterritorial, unilateral coercive measure, also as a matter of sovereignty, which is not irrelevant to any of us. Thank you very much.